jealous that you're at the beach.
I know. It was a short drive.
Just like outside the window of Fabled, right?
No, right. Oh, hopefully it will. I can hold. Nope. Won't be able. I'll just start off like this. Even my earrings are disappearing.
And you know, I would never in a million years be able to figure that out. So I'm going to
enjoy. Okay, because I think if we try it, the books will be in the ocean basically, so it won't work.
Yeah, I went to an event one time about a man who was talking about his dinosaur book, and he had some kind of green screen, and he was showing us his book, and you couldn't see anything. It was
funny. Really funny. Oh, I love everyone who's in the chat, y'all. I am so excited. Chris,
this is gonna be fun.
This is making me laugh.
Yeah, Chris, I'm the anti-technology queen. I'm a marvel.
We all have gifts. Don't worry. Yeah. Funny thing is, hopefully I know how to turn it off. Okay, I do. Oh my gosh. Well, do you have a drink of choice?
I'm drinking.
Oh, I love it. I have a Cosmo.
Oh, you're so good.
Well, it's mostly juice at this point because we're running low over here.
Well, my friend, who's a bookish friend,
oh,
is a seller of
yeah, that's right.
Wine, which has less toxins, less sugar, doesn't give you a headache, and it's fabulous. So this is the Sauvignon Blanc.
Love it.
Yeah,
I need to taste it.
You should come over.
No, I didn't. I love a good wine.
Because we hang out every night now.
I know. It's Monday, check. Tuesday, check. Wednesday. I'm going to not know what to do with myself tomorrow.
What are you doing tomorrow?
Tomorrow night. Of course. I'll be at the beach.
That's right.
Zoom.
To the beach. You see, I'm in a different location now where I don't have the sun creeping up over my face.
Yes.
It's going down.
That's true. Yeah. That's okay.
They have to choose this from now on.
It's a good light. I'm kind of laughing because I think in this picture, the sun is to my back maybe, but yet I have the ring light to my face. So it's like doesn't even look like.
That's so great. I'm jealous that you're at the beach right now.
Yes. We got a good breeze. I have air conditioning.
It's chilly.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you are coming in, I'm seeing people come in. If you want to introduce yourself in the chat, where you're from, your name. Hopefully our chat will be pretty active tonight because I can't wait to hear people's opinions. Oh, whoa.
Sonia, don't even. We don't want to hear it.
Back on? Where are you? Oh my gosh. Where are you live? She's in Canada. Okay.
She's my Canada friend.
I'm jealous.
We're at the Hell's Front Porch portion of our year.
Yes. Where they're telling to turn the air conditioning to a high number that I don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. We have some of our booksellers in the chat, which is so fun.
Oh.
I love it.
Yeah, I love the chat. Y'all keep chatting with us.
Yes. For sure. Yes. Okay. Are you ready to start? I'm going to turn off my background. I know it looks real, but I'm really not at the beach.
Really?
I'm in here.
This is so nice.
I know. It was, for a short while. We will keep it festive though with our drinks. We have our summer drinks, and welcome everybody to the summer reading preview. This has been in the works for a long time. I will say, I think that we read more books than usual for this preview. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah. And the percentage of good ones to bad ones was a little bit higher than normal.
Yes, I agree. I want to share with you guys that all the books that are not good, I read all of them. So
for the team.
I took it for the team. They're not on the list. So if you don't find them on the list, you will know that, it's just not worth your time. These are really worth your time. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how I'm going to start first. If you haven't been to one of our previews before, we give you a couple of links, and one of those links is a document that we have all of these books on. The document is linked too. So if you are pulling it up on your computer and you just click on any of these pages, usually at the bottom, it'll take you to the whole list of books we're going to talk about right now. So first, I'm going to drop this all in the chat. So hopefully, I know we have more people coming in, but I can repost, re-put it or whatever. If you don't get it, or you know someone else doesn't get it, I can post it again. So first, this is the list of books that we'll be talking about tonight. This is on Fabled's website. If you even want to pull it up, and you can add to cart as we talk. And then
1 second, Allison.
Yes.
If you're going to chat with us, change it to panelists and attendees. Because
Yeah.
we're got that response up. Sorry, I interrupted. Carry on.
Okay, so that first link is to our site. This is a list of all the books. And this next link is to the document. So you can choose to like download it now, you can save it and look at it later, or you can look at it as we're talking. It's really up to you what works for you guys. The other important thing that probably many of you are here for is our promo code that we give on these evenings. This promo code, if you buy these books and actually anything on our site, Father's Day coming up, we will give you 20% off. Now, our site is a little strange because we don't really have a space for promo codes. So this code will basically, you'll put it in the comments. Like you can have comments in your online sale, and you'll just put the code, and I'm going to put it right here. Oh, there's Kimberly too. Hello. So put that code, it's Summer Reads 2021. Put that code in the comments of your purchase. And then after your transaction hits the store, we will give you 20% off. So when you check out, you're not going to see the 20% off, but when you look at your bank transaction, you will see it. The code, good question. Erin says, does a code work if we come to the store? It doesn't work. It's only online. That's kind of the best way for us to ensure that everyone's using the code once, because it could be easy just to come in and use it over and over. So again, this code is for you to use once but
they could do it online and then just pick it up at the store, correct?
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, do it online. If you're local, you could just pick it up and choose that option online. If you have any questions about this, feel free to put it in the chat. I know it's a little confusing. I'm going to just post, since we've got some more new people here, I'm going to just post those 2 links again. And then, so first one is the list, second one is the document. All right. Well, should we start?
Let's start.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to reach up to my big stack here.
No, I'm really impressed that you stacked them all up. I was nervous for you.
This is not end well. We'll see. Okay, my first book tonight. This is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. And we're mainly doing books that were published from May the 1st through August 31st. So keep that in mind. So we have not talked about this before, but it's been all over Bookstagram. I picked this book up. I loved her book, 800 Grapes, that came out several years ago. So I picked this one up and loved it. The main character is Hannah, and Hannah has a 16-year-old stepdaughter named Bailey. She's married to a man named Owen. And one day Owen is missing. She has no idea what's going on. But somehow Owen slips a note to Hannah that just says, protect her. So she goes on this massive hunt to figure out what has happened to Owen. It brings her to Austin. So mostly this book is set in Austin, which is really fun. I was shocked to see Reese picked it for her book. And I think maybe it was a Book of the Month Club pick as well. It has been optioned to either a movie or mini series with Julia Roberts, who's going to play Hannah.
That's awesome.
When my best friends are asking me this summer, pick a book for me, I just want to read anything, this is the one I'm picking for them. So The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave.
Okay. And on our second thriller is The Plot by Jean Haniff Korelitz. I do not think I said that right, and I apologize to you. This is really good for your page turner. Like if you're on the plane or if you're on the beach, you're like, I just want to get wrapped up in something and be there until it ends. So the story is Jacob is an aspiring novelist, not like a great aspiring novelist, teaches an MFA program, and one of his students, who's really arrogant, named Evan, basically says, like, I don't need you. I have the best plot for a story, blah, blah, blah. And he tells him, and Jacob's like, that is actually a good plot. But then Evan dies suddenly. And Jacob says, well, that book is not going to get written. So he decides to write it himself using the same plot. Now, the twist is Evan has died. The book is getting all these accolades. And he suddenly starts getting emails, letters that say, you were a thief. I know what you did, and which is scary to him. So as the book is getting more popular, he's also getting more anxious on what is happening. So it's definitely a page turner. I would recommend it to anybody, honestly. If you even have a non-reader in your family, this book, I think they'll be really happy to dive into. So the plot.
Okay, the next one we don't have a copy of. Alison, can you?
Yes, I'm going to have a visual for you. But you can go ahead and.
Okay, it is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. And I love thrillers. There it is. Yes. And Riley Sager is a favorite of mine. I read everything he writes, and this one comes out next month. It is so good. So Charlie is our main character. She is in college in 1991, and her best friend was murdered by a serial killer who is targeting her college campus. So she decides, she wants to go home. She's done with college. She's studying film noir. There's a whole lot of references to old Hollywood films in this book. And so she doesn't have a car. She looks on a rideshare board. Back in 1991, they didn't have the internet. And there just is a man named Josh Baxter who's also going around the same area she is to go home. And so they get in the car together and they start driving, and then things get a little spooky. It's maybe some of the scariest, most suspenseful scenes I've read in a long time. I especially loved the first half of this book. So, I've talked about this before, but it's very interesting. A lot of books are set in the 1990s because, Charlie could have easily just Googled help or asked for help on her cell phone, which did not happen in 1991. So I highly recommend this book. It's fabulous, and it comes out next month. That's Survive the Night by Riley Sager.
Awesome.
Okay, now we're going to get into the compare and contrast portion of the evening. We find a lot of times that books come out that are similar themes in a certain season. So we can talk about that in a minute. But this year, the theme is terrorism on planes. Just now that the world is opened up again, maybe this is the government's way of saying, maybe you should stay home. So I'm going to talk about both of these. I read both of them. So Hostage is written by Claire McIntosh. I picked this one up first. I love Claire McIntosh. She has written some mysteries that I still think about to this day. And so in Hostage, Mina is a flight attendant. She's got some problems at home, but she wants to be on this flight. It's the first flight, I think, from New York to Sydney, Australia. So it's going to be the longest flight, something like 20 hours long. So she takes off, and then all of a sudden she gets a message that something's going to happen to her daughter if she doesn't help find a way to crash the plane. And so it's an interesting setup. I love how Claire McIntosh writes. She's very sophisticated. Each chapter has a different, say, passenger in 2B, and then it explains who this person is. And so you're trying to figure out which one of the people on the plane is the bad guy. It has a really unique twist at the end. And I loved it. I actually read this one on a plane just to up the terror level, just because that's what I like to do. And I really liked Hostage. This weekend, I picked up Falling. This is a debut novel. I think there were 42 publishers who got the initial book and passed on it. The 43rd said, "This looks really good," and gave her a 7-figure contract. TJ Newman was a flight attendant for 10 years. She wrote this book while she was on red-eye flights for years. And the setup is she actually asked a pilot one time, if a terrorist told you that he would kill your family if you don't crash a plane, what would you do? And the pilot went, didn't know the answer. So she knew she had a good plot for a book. I started this book twice. The prologue is really dumb and it doesn't even add anything to the book. And it's like a 2-page prologue. So don't let that stop you, because once I got going on the book, I literally didn't put it down the entire weekend. This is, you can tell she's not the most sophisticated writer, but the plot on this one is so good. I loved this book. It reminds me, I visualized a movie. I'm sure this is going to be made into a movie. I love the flight attendants that she wrote. One of them is Jo. She's an amazing, strong person. There was a little one named Big Daddy who was hilarious. I'll be recommending this book to everyone who comes into the store. So that's Falling. So if you don't ask me which one I liked better, there's good parts of both. The nice thing is they come out several weeks in between each other, so you can compare and contrast also.
I love that. So if someone has like a fear of flying, is this a book that would make them nervous or anxious? Either one of those.
Nervous, yes. Anxious, yes.
Make a note if you need a book for a plane ride.
Yeah, this one we lacked. I think my friend Sarah from Sarah's Bookshelves is like, if anyone sees this book in a bookstore in the airport, let us know, because I don't think that's very conducive to flying. And I want to give this to everyone who comes into the store. But if you're thinking about hijacking a plane, do not read this book.
Yes, and if you're thinking about hijacking a plane, please let us know so we can turn you into the authorities.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really, really good. So anyway.
One thing that we're doing this time around too is we know that many summer vacations you just want to grab a paperback book, and many books are coming out are hardcover. So in this guide we put books that are coming out in paperback. So some of them have been on our fall guide or our spring guide before, so you may recognize them and you may have read them, but we just want to highlight them just so you know when you're at the bookstore and you just need to grab a couple of books that you'll eventually like leave at the hotel because you've read them. These are them.
Mm-hmm. So we'll go through these quickly. The ones that we are highlighting are ones that were in our preview last year. So if you've been tuning in since last year, you can go get a drink or something. But quickly, these are ones that we all love and have sold really well at the store. So yes, Riley Sager making another comeback. This is a ghost story about a house. Came out last year. It glows in the dark. I don't know. I'm hoping the paperback does too. But it reminded me of some 90s movie. What was that movie, Alison? We talked about Nicole Kidman, where she's
The Others.
The Others. This reminded me a little bit of The Others.
I like that.
Loved.
Chris, one of our booksellers, says it's very scary.
Oh, Chris, it's not that scary. Okay, Winter Counts. This came out last year. Very interesting story. Virgil, wounded horse, is helps kind of, they don't really have police force on Native American reservations. The federal authorities don't get involved, and American authorities don't get involved with these cases on reservations. So people are paid to kind of take care of business. And so I learned a whole lot reading this book. Very interesting, the dynamics between the reservation issues and the American issues. And yeah, I loved this book. It's gotten a whole lot of awards and it's well deserved. Again, this will be out in paperback. It'll be in July.
Yes, and your document will tell you when everything is released, if it's already released or if it has a release date in the future.
Yeah, very good. And Saving Ruby King. This was one of my favorite mysteries last year. The author is 26 years old, I believe. She's amazing. It's mainly about two best friends named Ruby and Layla, and they live on the south side of Chicago. Ruby's mother is murdered, so they're trying to figure out who it is. Every chapter is a different person in their tight-knit community, and one of the narrators is the church they attend, which was the coolest thing. I loved it so much. It's a little graphic, little dark, but very unique and so well written. I loved this book, Saving Ruby King, coming out in paperback.
All right, we're going to talk about historical fiction.
All right.
Right, you're next. I have
okay, yes. We're sharing responsibilities here. So this one is The Personal Librarian. And if you guys get the Indie Next catalog, I actually wrote the little blurb on this about how much I love it. So pick up the Indie Next catalog. They've got some good ones this month. The story from The Personal Librarian, it's interesting. Marie Benedict and Victoria Murray co-wrote it. Marie Benedict has written a lot of historical fiction, but she felt like to try to get into the mind of an African-American woman, she wanted some help from Victoria Murray. So that's kind of a neat pairing with these two authors. This is the true story of Belle DaCosta Green. And she is hired by J.P. Morgan to be his personal librarian. He wanted to have the greatest library ever, so he needed some help with that, to collect works that were hard to find. So he hires her, and she does a great job, but Bella is hiding a secret. She's actually passing for a white woman. She's African American. I think she claims that she's Portuguese, but she did not feel like she would get the job if she claimed her African American heritage. And interestingly, her father was the first Black man to graduate from Harvard. So it's kind of interesting that he really was promoted that, and she wanted to hide it. But I spent most of the time reading this book with my phone next to me, Googling constantly. There were just fascinating things about the story. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. The Personal Librarian.
Love it. Okay, our next one is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It has such a good summer feel. I really love the cover. This is set in the 1980s. It really feels like the Party 16 Candles, but grown up and a little more R-rated. It is the story of four siblings who their father is a famous musician, and it goes back and forth between the past and the present of these siblings and their lives and what's going on. It's like a really fast and easy read, even though it's going like kind of jumping. I was able to just keep going and not, I didn't want to get up from it because I was just like so interested in it. If you have read The 7 Lives of Evelyn Hugo, there are characters in that book that are in this book. And it has a lot of times with family dramas, you have siblings that are like pitted against each other. This one, the siblings are very supportive of each other. So that's kind of refreshing to see that. But if you really love that throwback of 80s and 90s, which I mean, she did so well with Daisy Jones, this is a great one. This feels very summery to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it hurt my heart that this was considered historical fiction.
Oh.
Yeah. That's so yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one too. So it reminded me of you remember those movies in the 80s and 90s where it kind of takes place over a party, and
yes.
Party gets
like
more nice. Yeah. And it gets more and more raucous and things get destroyed. That is this book to a T.
Yes. I think that makes it feel like a fast read because there's literally like chapters that say like 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. and the whole chapter is what happened within those hours. So
with each closer to the end of the night, the chapters get shorter and shorter and shorter. So that's kind of it kind of propels the story.
That's so smart. I love that kind of pacing. Okay, the next one is Ridgeline by Michael Punk. And I read The Revenant, which he wrote, and then I saw the movie and I loved it. I really love like historical survival or Old West kind of feel. This one is set in Wyoming, and it's right after the Civil War. And if you've watched Dances with Wolves or Last Mohicans, I recently watched those. And so this book just fit right in. It's so interesting too, because you think about the US Army after the Civil War and how they like the whole country basically had to be united at the end over one thing. And the Army was fighting so hard for something. And so then they turned their attention to the Indian territories. So this it deals with Colonel Henry Carrington, who is in the area, and then Crazy Horse, who is a Lakota warrior, and how his members of his tribe attack the members of the US Army. So there are real characters, real instances in this book. So if you love that type of history, this is like so wonderful. This is a great Father's Day gift if you have a history buff dad. I really, really liked it.
Yeah, my husband read it too. I tried to have him have the dude perspective, and he really loved that book. So
yes, I really think it's a good dude book for sure. I love that everybody in the comments is talking about that they were 80s high school, or we're all historical at this point. Love it. Okay, the next one is Haven Point by Virginia Hume. And who, I'm saying that correctly?
Hume. Mm-hmm.
Hume. Okay, she is the daughter of Britt Hume, who I think is Fox News correspondent, political analyst, I think.
He was the White House correspondent for, I think, ABC.
Okay, that's right. So basically completely different than what I said.
Oh no, he did that too.
Okay. Yeah. This is such a good beach read. I feel like if you like Elin Hildebrand, this is a good one, but this one has more depth to it. It's a generational saga where 3 women in a family, and kind of goes back and forth to each one of their stories. There's Marin, who is a World War II nurse. There's Annie, who is her daughter, who is an alcoholic. And then there's Skye, the granddaughter, who just has dealt with an alcoholic mother and not really known a lot about her mother's history. So they have a house in Haven Point, and it kind of has its own like little community. And I was telling Elizabeth, because she read this and loved it, and she's like, "Do you like it?" I'm like, "I really do. I feel like that I want to read it. I don't know where this book is going, but I don't care because I like it." It was just one of those books that you could just fall into, like almost like a mini series. I feel like this book, I could see it as totally a mini series where you like get the full aspect of one character and the full aspect of another character. And the whole time, I think towards the end, I was like, oh, okay, now I know where it's gonna go. But it's just so enjoyable. I loved it. And fun fact, I'll let Elizabeth share this fun fact about this book.
We have picked it for our August book club, and Virginia will be joining us August the 10th. So mark your calendars.
Yes.
So this is one of my favorite books of the summer too. I loved, there's a little American history, a little romance, a little family drama, kind of explores what does it mean to belong to a community. And one of my friends who read it said it just felt like all these women are very much drawn and very much repelled by Haven Point.
Oh, that's good. Like it's the place is almost its own character, really.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Gorgeous. Oh, my turn. Okay. I have a funny little story about this one. This is Morningside Heights by Joshua Henkin. And this guy is really good at PR. He reached out to me and said, "I've had this new book. I really want you to read it. Please read it and blurb it." So I'll put it on my website. And I thought, oh, I just feel so special that he asked me to do that. And I picked it up and read it. And when I went to, and I blurbed it and put it on his website, well, I think he asked literally every single bookseller in America to do the same thing. There were pages and pages of independent bookstore book buyers who blurbed his book. And I just picked it up. I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And I loved it. It's the story of a woman named Prudence. She's born in Ohio. And it starts off in 1976. She goes to college. She meets her, I think it was her professor named Spencer. They have a beautiful marriage. She's very proud of him. He's kind of a giant intellectual. And then so we kind of follow the course of their marriage. And toward the end, he starts showing signs of Alzheimer's. So it's kind of she's taking care of Spence. And it takes place in New York City in the Jewish community. I think I enjoyed reading about the neighborhood they live in, kind of these close-knit communities inside this huge city of New York. And the writing is beautiful. It's kind of a quiet book, but it's the story of Prue's life and kind of what she does to get by when her husband is no longer there mentally. So I really, really enjoyed this one. He writes beautifully. I got to hear him speak last night, and I would highly recommend it. Morningside Heights. If you like character-driven, well-written novels.
I love the cover so much. I feel like if you come to Fabled, and we're going to probably have this always turned out.
Yes, very pretty.
So let's talk about historical fiction paperbacks.
Okay. These are two that I loved last year. One of them is Kristen Harmel's The Book of Lost Names. Harmel does a great job with, she loves World War II, and she loves finding very small little stories that you're not familiar with so all of her books are based on the truth. And this was about Eva Abrams, who kind of helped during the war with all these little Jewish children who were being ripped away from their families. She found a passage for them, or helped find passage to freedom, but all their names had to be changed. So she made sure to write down these children's names. So once the war was over, these children could find their families, and that actually happened. So, I know World War II fiction we've got a whole lot of stories, but this one was a really special one. And I recommend it to World War II or just historical fiction fans. It's a very heartfelt and wonderful story. Okay. And this one was a favorite of mine last summer, Florence Adler Swims Forever. So this takes place in Atlantic City in the 1930s. Our main characters are Esther and Joseph Adler, who have a daughter named Florence. And we find out very quickly that Florence is a swimmer. She wants to swim the English Channel, and is practicing in Atlantic City, and she goes for a swim and never comes back. So that's not a spoiler. This happens in the first chapter of the book. But it just so happens that Florence's older sister is pregnant. She's lost some babies due to stress, and she's in a hospital bed for weeks on end. But the family does not want to tell the sister that Florence has passed away because they don't want to stress her out further. So there's this big conspiracy to kind of keep that quiet. So it's a good discussion book. It makes you think, are there times where hiding the truth is okay for the greater good? So I think most people I have recommended this book to have loved it. It was a surprise hit last year. It is loosely based on the life of Rachel Beanland's family, and I loved it.
So great. All right, I don't have a visual of this, because even the hardcover, because we are out in the store, which is a good sign. So the next one is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. Now, a lot of people don't know this about me, but my dad is like a world-renowned Shakespeare professor. So I had him read this one. And I will say, a lot of people don't love when there are conspiracies or you're messing with history, but this one is so beautifully written, like to fill in the cracks of William Shakespeare's life. It's called Hamnet because his son was named Hamnet. And the Black Plague is all over England, and his son dies. And it is almost like this beautiful, it's like a beautiful story of grief, and just giving more humanity to this person that we know and treasure as like a literary figure. But also you find out later that he wrote Hamlet as a kind of a love story to his son, almost like a redemptive story. And it's so beautiful. I mean, you will just love it. Now, again, there could be, if you are a classicist, and I don't think I said it right. if you're someone who loves the classics, does not want to mess with things, or you do not like to hear conspiracy theories about if Shakespeare was really a woman or somebody else, you may have trouble quieting those voices in your head. But if you kind of just like love to read like the what ifs and what does life really look like, I would recommend this book. I love, and Deb said, Maggie O'Farrell can do no wrong in my opinion. And Brenda asked, what would my dad think of Hamlet? My dad did not like it because he is, I mean, he can't see the forest for the trees for this situation. But Elizabeth loved it. I mean, I do love a like haunting story. So I would say this is categorized in that.
And interestingly, it's really not about Shakespeare. It's about his wife. And Shakespeare's name is never mentioned in the book. He is Anna, I think it's Anna's husband, or the poet.
Like she's known as Anne and Agnes.
Okay, so yeah, I'm really terrible with names. It started with an A. And so that made it interesting. So maybe someone who really loves Shakespeare is offended because he's not even mentioned. This is about her story. And there is a scene in this book that took my breath away, talking about the plague and how it started with the flea. And then the flea bit the sailor. And then it goes on and on and on. And how this little flea in Spain or somewhere far away made its way to England to start the plague. And the whole time I was like, oh my gosh, it was fascinating. So I loved this story. Okay, sorry, I'm thinking about Hamlet still. All right, last year I had 3 books that were tied for my 3 favorites of the year, and this was one of them. But this is my favorite historical fiction of 2020. This is The Exiles by Christina Baker Klein. And a little known fact, I know most of us know that Australia was founded as a prison community. So these bad boys in England were shipped to Australia if they were prisoners. Well, after a while, these prisoners, they were trying to populate the island. So what do they need? They need the women. So women who were mostly charged with petty crimes in England were shipped to Australia to help populate the island. And the main character in this book is named Evangeline, and she is charged with a theft that just make you so angry. But she winds up with several of her friends being forced to go to Australia to serve out their time. This reminded me of Les Miserables. It reminded me of The Forgotten Garden. It's almost perfection. I cannot recommend this book more highly. And I'm excited that it'll be in paperback next month. But if you love historical fiction, you don't want to miss this one.
I will say we got to interview Christina Baker Klein, and one thing, this is not spoiling the story, but was so surprising that she revealed to us is that she used the formula of a horror story. And that was so interesting to me because we asked her about a particular choice she made and she told us that. And so I almost was like, I want to read it all over again. And so now if you haven't read it, you get the privilege of knowing that. But it is so good. It will just wrap you up.
Yes, she did, Deb. She wrote that book. She also wrote The Orphan Train. So she is wonderful.
Yes. And I think that the Orphan Train movie was finished filming maybe right before COVID or something. I'm not sure. Remember?
Oh, is there a movie?
I think it's about to release. Maybe don't
You'll have to let me know.
You'll have to Google and find out if I'm telling the truth because I'm not sure.
Yeah. All right. Are we going to nonfiction now?
Yes, it is time for nonfiction.
Okay. I'm such a nonfiction fan. I think I read a lot of fiction, and sometimes I can get kind of bogged down with it. And I love nonfiction for a palate cleanse. So anyway, here's the best of the best from this year. And I'm starting off with maybe my favorite nonfiction so far of the year, The Rite of Her Life by Elizabeth Letts. She wrote Finding Dorothy, which was one of my favorite books of, I think, 2019. She loves horses. She's written a book called The Perfect Horse, which I have not read yet. So if you know me at all, You know that I love curmudgeon literature. I love old people behaving badly. I don't know why, I just do. Well, here is a real life curmudgeon, Annie Wilkins. This is Annie. This is her. This is her in real life in the picture. In early 1950s, Annie is 63 years old, which was basically an elderly woman back in the day. And she lives in Maine. She has lost her farm due to back taxes. She's had a case of pneumonia so severe that her doctor told her she might live another 2 years, but only if she really takes it easy. And because she had no money, the doctor offered her a bed in the poorhouse in the backwoods of Maine. And Annie said, "No, thank you. I'm not doing that. I'm not going out like that." So any kind of money that she had left, which was not much, she bought a horse. And this is Tarzan. And Annie and Tarzan and her dog Depeche Trois set out from Maine to go see the coast of California. She always wanted to see California. So this is a 4,000-mile journey before radar, before Google Maps. And she just took off. And she relied on the kindness of strangers to get by. And you find out as the story progresses, she becomes kind of famous. People look for her. She had a marriage proposal at one point. She met Andrew Wyeth, who actually painted a picture of her horse. And she was able to say, she didn't listen to what the doctor said, and she wound up, well, no spoilers here, but she makes it to California. And I just loved kind of the feel-good story of the kindness of strangers, the 1950s Americana. I loved it. I also want to say at this point that, there's lots of different people are authors, and there can be real jerks who write great books, and that's fine. I'll still read their books. But I love supporting really kind authors. And Elizabeth Letts heard me talk about her book and actually wrote the sweetest thing. She sent me a book talking about how much I love curmudgeons, and sent me some 1950s candy, and also about 50 signed nameplates to put in our book. So the first 50 people or so who buy her book will get it signed by the author.
And the nameplates are beautiful. I saw them and I was like, they're gorgeous.
Yeah. So I love to, when I meet a kind person, really champion their book. So I talked a lot about this one, but this one's really, really special. So, okay. The next one is Madhouse at the End of the Earth. I love curmudgeons, but I also really love disaster stories, nonfiction disaster stories. Several years ago, I read a book called The Kingdom of Ice by Hampton Sides, and I was mesmerized by the story of this the USS Jeanette that gets stuck in the Antarctic, I think for 2 years in an ice floe. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. But this one, The Madhouse at the End of the Earth, is kind of a similar story. It's a Belgian ship called the Belgica, and the man who is the captain is Adrian de Gerlach, some Belgian name, I don't know, but his ship is going to they're all just trying I think it's in the 1800s, no, 1897, trying the exploration of the South Pole. Well, sure enough, they get there and they start realizing there's going to be problems. They can either go back and admit defeat or give it a go and keep going, which they did. And they got stuck in an ice floe. And so there's there's sort of a madness that happens in this. The sailors started having, I'm I'm sure it was scurvy and different problems of isolation. So they all kind of went mad, which is where the name of the book comes from. One of the doctors on the ship was named Dr. Frederick Cook. And at the beginning of the book, you find out that he's in prison in Nebraska. I think it's Nebraska. So he's got an interesting story. So anyone who loves sort of a disaster story, nautical story, adventure story, I think you'd really enjoy Madhouse at the End of the Earth.
I also think if you live in Texas and you're very hot, there is something about the description of Antarctica that will make you a little bit cold, maybe a little chilled when you read this. So this, I mean, that's also a great Father's Day gift, a great birthday gift, your history buff.
Isn't that so nice that we're not going to get stuck in an ice floe?
Yes. Well, I was actually going to point out, Elizabeth, because we always joke around here that we have like niche genres that we like. And so Elizabeth has curmudgeon literature. And I was going to say, I also think you like boat disasters.
I do. Well, disasters in general, but maybe boat disasters.
Maybe, yes.
Specifically.
I was like, you know, I realized you have read a lot of books that have to do the boat capsizing, something happening.
Yes. Well, even that Great Halifax explosion. I love that book. I recommend it all the time. That was an explosion that happened in the water.
Yeah.
Mm.
So if you also enjoy that niche, this is a book for you. All right. So the next one is Chasing the Thrill. And I want to read the full description. Obsession, Death, and Glory in America's Most Extraordinary Treasure Hunt. Now, I heard about, this is a true story. I heard about this story like maybe right when the pandemic happened, which was kind of like a wonderful time to hear about this true story. So there is a man named Forrest Fenn, and he's actually like grew up in Temple, just south of us. And he got cancer and was going, like, knew he was going to die. And so he collected art. So he decided he was going to bury treasure. And he wrote a poem that was the key to where the treasure is. So it turned out that the cancer didn't kill him. And people were obsessed with this. There have been people who have tried to find this treasure and died. I mean, several of them. There are people, I mean, and really all he said, I think the only description is you knew that it was in the United States somewhere. So people would pore over the poem. They would try to figure out where they, you know, thought that they knew where it was. He would give a couple of hints, but they really weren't hints. So this story is written by a journalist who's told the story and by someone who, like on their weekends, they would go searching for the treasure. And so he started investigating like all of the things. Now, I'm not spoiling this because it was in the news, but his treasure was found last June. And Forrest passed away, I think, in September. And so the person who found it didn't want to even want to reveal who he was because everyone was so obsessed with this. I actually personally know someone who tried to find this treasure, who thought it was like amazing, which it really is amazing when you have a true life like treasure hunt, like makes me think of the Goonies or something like that. So this is so interesting. And if you are not sure about this, I would encourage you to look online, look at some of the stories that that people have done on, even, I think we even watched a couple of videos of people who like, that is their hobby obsession, is finding this treasure. So this is a really, really good one.
He talks about there's the history of treasure hunting in America as well. And there's some very, well, not just America, I think all over the place, but that also made, I love that book too. He wrote for the Wall Street Journal, the man who, and actually went on the hunt as well. So, okay, this is my latest. I think I read this one right before the cutoff. I kept wanting to read one more book for this, and this one made the cut big time. So Patrick Radden Keefe, I found him a couple of years ago. I think in 2019, he wrote Say Nothing about the Troubles in Ireland, and I was completely obsessed with that story. So I was delighted to hear that he had another book out, and this one is good. It is pretty thick, so just be aware. But this one is about the Sackler family, and I said this book reminds me of a combination of Dope Sick, Bad Blood, and an episode of Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. So the Sacklers are some of the most, the wealthiest families in America and even in the world. The original Sackler Arthur Sackler was described as maybe like a Medici. And he made a lot of money. He was a doctor. He was an immigrant family from, I think, Austria. Poor as anything as a child in the 1930s, but became a doctor. He and his three brothers did. But Arthur Sackler got really good at marketing. So he stopped being an actual doctor and worked as a marketer for prescription drugs. And he came up with the idea of, we need to sell these to doctors, not, that way we can get our product out. So he made a fortune doing that. He helped to really make Librium and Valium a household name. And so the story of their rise from poverty to billionaire was fascinating. Well, the family fortune went from humongous to light years more than that in the 1980s. It was very kind of secretive how they made all their money. Oh, I also wanted to mention Arthur Sackler donated millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to the Smithsonian, to the Met, to the Columbia University, all over the place. He donated art. He brought over something from Egypt. A tomb that's older than Jesus was moved from Egypt to the Met, I think, or the Smithsonian. I think it's the Met. So he was very well renowned for all he did for society. Well, it turns out that the Sackler family turned to making OxyContin. So their huge wealth really was on the backs of millions of people losing their lives or becoming addicted to OxyContin. It talks about Rush Limbaugh got addicted to OxyContin and lost his hearing. Many people lost their lives because of the way they marketed this drug. So, it's how does Columbia University or the Met handle that when all the millions of dollars and beautiful things were donated by this family? So I was riveted by this story. My daughter, who doesn't even read books much, was riveted by the story. I can't recommend it highly enough. I think, again, this will be a good Father's Day gift. And it's something that I think anybody would enjoy hearing the story.
I want to read that one.
It's good.
Good. All right, my next one is What Happened to You by Bruce Perry and a little unknown named Oprah Winfrey. Oh. This, I kind of stumbled upon this and kind of thought it was interesting and started reading it. And one of the big, I guess, overarching missions of when we book buy at Fabled is empathy. And this book is really interesting because it kind of, I'll say this. Bruce Perry is a doctor of the brain and trauma. And he talks about how we should not be saying to people, what's wrong with you? We should rather say what happened to you. And how it's really amazing just how, like, even as an infant, things that have happened to you can affect you for the rest of your life. This is almost like an Oprah show in a book. So if you enjoyed the Oprah show, I would definitely recommend this one. And one interesting tidbit that I learned from this book is that Oprah has never seen a therapist, ever. And I was surprised at that. As much as she knows the therapist and talks about therapy, she has never seen a therapist. But recommend this one. It's just a really good one to just change your perspective, offer empathy to people. And as we're coming out of the pandemic, and maybe we're not even sure if we want people back in our lives as we had them before, it's a good one to keep that in mind.
Did you read Gail Woodward saying that Bruce Perry treated for free the children who came out of the Branch Davidian compound? Did you know that?
I did not know that. That is amazing.
Yeah. Love it. And thank you for that. All right. My next one has not come out yet, but it is Lightning Strike by William Kent Kruger. I would recommend, if you're looking for an author who writes beautifully, and you haven't read any of his books, I can't recommend him more highly. I told someone recently, when I read his books, it's like my heart rate slows down and I just feel really cozy. I love William Kent Kruger. The first book I ever read of his was Ordinary Grace, and I recommend it all the time. And another one of his that is coming out in paperback. Well, I'll talk about that later. But this one's coming out in August. And he writes mainly about Minnesota, about the Iron Lake area of Minnesota. And one of his characters he frequently has on his books is a sheriff named Cork O'Connor. Well, in this book, Cork O'Connor is a 12-year-old boy. And Cork, this reminds me of If Winter Counts met Mayberry. So that's a weird combination, but it really works. So Cork is 12 years old. He idolizes his sheriff father, Liam O'Connor. And one day Cork and his buddy are, oh, did we switch? Yes, we're now at literary fiction. Sorry.
Just going to mention that after you talked about this.
Sorry. Literary fiction. This is kind of I love this genre. So anyway, Cork and his buddy are hiking around Iron Lake, and they find a man hanging from a tree. And he is a Native American that Cork really loves. It looks like a suicide, but is it really a suicide? Got to tune in to find out. So Cork goes and talks to his dad. Liam, of course, is investigating the crime, but little Cork is also investigating the crime along with his dad. And anyway, this is considered the zero in the series of Cork O'Connor. So if you kind of want to know Cork's backstory before he becomes the sheriff of this community in Aurora, Minnesota. But anyway, this one comes out in August, and I dearly loved it. And if you haven't read him before, read all of his backlist. You won't be disappointed. So. Oh, I'm up again. Okay. This is another one. We're cheating just a little bit. This one actually came out in just a little cheat. This one actually came out in February, but I didn't read it until May. And I said, Alison, I know that our rules are made in August, but I've got to put this one in because I loved this book. Landslide by Susan Conley. And it is not a typical book that I would want to read. It's kind of slow, kind of character driven. That's what I thought. But the main character in this book is Jill. Jill lives in Maine. She has 2 boys, and she refers to her boys as the wolves. So can I get an amen from all of our listeners who have multiple boys and understands the reference of them being wolves? Preach it, girl. Yeah. So my boys are now nearly 20 and 22. Well, they will be this fall. And I feel like I'm just getting out of the wolf stage, but I felt seen here in this story. So Jill's husband is a fisherman. He's in a terrible accident in Canada. And is in a hospital. And so Jill is trying to juggle raising the wolves, thinking, is she being too lenient to one of them? Is she babying one of her boys too much? Also feeling the need to be with her husband while he is convalescing after a serious accident, and juggling all of her life. So I think it's interesting. And there's somebody who I really respect who read this book and was like, I don't understand the hype. And I said, do you have boys? And she said, no, I have all girls. I'm like, that's the problem. So if you have boys, especially multiple boys, I cannot recommend this book more highly. It's not one that, again, I would typically pick up, but I just really felt seen and felt like I understood where Jill was coming from, and I loved it. So Landslide.
I have 3 brothers. Do you think I can relate a little bit to the wolves?
Yeah, your mama needs to read that one. My sister has 4 boys. So we have, my mother has 7 grandsons and 2 little girls. So that we have boys coming out of our ears. But yeah, I loved it.
Okay, great. So my next one is The Other Black Girl by Zakia Delia Harris. This one is about a woman who works in the publishing industry at a publisher. Her name is Nella, and she's the only Black person in her company. And the company hires another Black person. And so she is excited because at the same, she has been experiencing like microaggressions and just feeling very different. So she's like, okay, great. There's going to be someone who like can relate to me, and we can be a team. And this new person's name is Hazel, and she gets to know Hazel, really likes her. But then Hazel starts to be very well liked in the company, and even sometimes will, I guess, be really passive aggressive to her in meetings, or gaslight her a little bit. So Nella is like, what is going on? So I don't want to give anything away, but I knew this ahead of time before reading this book, and I think it didn't spoil it for me, but this is really a combo of, if you've seen the movie Get Out or The Stepford Wives, it's kind of the story is like there are more things happening than is what is actually seen. And I did not expect the story to take the route it did. It was so interesting, and I think I was really kind of fascinated that the author decided to set it in a publisher's office, because I was like, what publisher's gonna be like, great, that sounds great, we'll publish it, just because there's a lot of inequality pointed out in the book and discrimination, but it was really, really interesting, and kept me guessing to the end. So recommend it.
I was just looking at the chat, circling back. Lightning Strike does not need to be read in any order. I haven't read all the, well, I think if you have not read any of the Cork O'Connor series, it's fine. It stands on its own. So that's all.
Okay, great. The next one, oops, I was going to try to share my screen. And
if you are here tonight, you will be receiving a recording of this.
Yes. If you need to leave it in time, do not, we will send this out tomorrow, probably like exactly 24 hours later, I think is when Zoom sends it. You'll have the promo code, you'll have the list, you'll have the link, everything. So we understand when things come up, especially if your mom trying to put kids to bed. All right, the next one is Songs in Ursa Major. This one, fun thing about this book, it is loosely based on the love affair between James Taylor and Joni Mitchell. And the story starts with Jessie Reed, who is this like really well-known star at a island folk fest. And he is about to play, but on the way there, he gets in an accident. So they have to like scramble. And so they bring up this band of this girl named Jane. I think it's called Jane and the Breakers, I think it's called. And of course, the crowd is expecting him, but then this band comes up and they love her so much. So she gets to actually go on tour with him and open for him. And it is about their relationship. It's also an interesting take on like because it is set in the 60s and 70s. An interesting take on how women were treated in the music industry then. I think if you have loved Daisy Jones, this would be a great follow-up for that same kind of feel of like being in the music industry at a certain time, and the relationships between band members, musicians, and all that. Do you have anything to add to that, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I loved this book. Emma Brady works in the publishing field, and another little neat aspect of this book is Jane is kind of poor. It's loosely based on Martha's Vineyard, and her family are the workers of Martha's Vineyard. And I love the relationship that Jane has with her aunt, especially. It's beautiful. So I grew up, my parents were, flower children, not really, but 60s people who love all this music. So there's just a neat little nostalgia in this book. And it's a debut. It's really good.
Mm-hmm. I think we've ordered like 20 or something like that. We've ordered a lot of these books. They're on their way. So make sure you buy it, because we have a lot at the shop.
That would be a good even present to give your mother, if you're our I guess mother, who maybe in the baby boomers would love this book.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next one is one that I was not necessarily on my radar, but it came to the store and I picked it up and loved it. The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. This book is catnip for book lovers, for people who, the term nowadays is uplit, just sort of happy, hallmarky, heartwarming stories. So if you're looking for something like this, I would highly recommend The Reading List. There's a widower, so it's again little curmudgeon, little nod to my curmudgeon love. Widower, his name is Mukesh, and Mukesh adored his wife, but now he is a widow, and it's hilarious because he has three daughters, and the three daughters are constantly calling him to make sure he's taking out the trash, make sure that he's eating okay. So it's cute that almost every chapter that the daughters are leaving him voicemails, and anyway, he's just feeling lost. He's kind of become reclusive in his home, then decides one day to go to the library. And his wife loved the library. I think she loved a book, and at this moment, it's escaped me which one it is. I'll think of it in a minute. It may be I think it's the Time Traveler's Wife. But he should have turned it back in to the library, but he didn't because it reminded him of his wife. So he read the book and loved it and thought, I'm going to go and try to return it and maybe pick up another book. And it's just cute how this nearly 90-year-old man is trying to figure out how to get to the library. And there he meets Alicia, who is a teenage girl who's working at the library. She doesn't care about the library. She's just trying to make some money. And Alicia has found a list in a book saying if you need some help, these are the books you need to read. And it's books that all of the book lovers and us love. It's The Kite Runner, Little Women. Anyway, so some other books that we all know. What's the one? To Kill a Mockingbird. That's the first one. And so he starts reading these books, and one of them is Rebecca, and it's so cute because he has this woman who starts to kind of want to start dating him, and he starts thinking of her as the other woman, and he was worried that his widow would start haunting the house. It's really cute. So Mukesh kind of comes out of his shell and starts to really connect with his granddaughter who loves to read, and it's just a happy, feel-good, sweet story. So yeah, you might want this in August when you're tired of all the children being home and need something happy to read.
That's great.
All right, next one. This one also is a cheat. I read this one. This one came out in April, but I read it maybe in May, and I wanted to mention it. I recently recommended it on one of my book buying appointments, and the woman texted me this morning that it was a 5-star read for her. This book is gorgeous. I loved it. What Comes After by Joanne Tompkins. It starts off with, it's set in the Pacific Northwest. I love the descriptions of where they live. And it's a tragedy occurs in this little town. There's a murder-suicide of 2 teenage boys, and it rips up these 2 families. Well, after a little bit, a pregnant teenager comes to town. So she kind of is semi-adopted by the father of one of the boys who was killed. And he is a Quaker. You see him wrestling with his faith after the death of his child. It's written beautifully. The dog in this book is named Rufus. He is the best dog I have ever read about. Almost makes me want a dog.
I want a dog. You don't have a dog.
I don't have a dog, but should I get a dog? I kind of want a dog, especially one just like Rufus. The author had a dog that she dearly loved, and she based Rufus off of her dog. I can't recommend this more highly. I should get a dog. I'll think about it. But I love this book, and do you want beautiful literature, wrestling with faith? I don't know. I loved it. I don't know anyone who's read this book who hasn't loved it. So I would really highly recommend this book. I think it is a debut. And she was an attorney that worked with CPS children. So she knows what she's talking about. So anyway.
All right, well, let's talk about literary paperbacks.
This one's not a paperback.
No,
hard. This is as hard as it gets.
That's right. It made it on the paperback, but plot twist.
We're almost there. This is the last one, literary. This book was so great. This was not on my radar, and I think it was a book of the month fun pick. So I was interested. I'd heard some reviews of it. And I thought, I'm just going to give it a try, and I loved it. So the main character is Daniel. Daniel has SMA, which is similar to ALS, but it affects you when you're a child. So he can't speak. And the book does a fabulous job describing what he goes through physically. I was riveted. I was just reading this book. And Daniel he works for the airline company, and he's always looking out the window, and there's a girl who always waves at him. One day she turns up missing, but he saw the girl get into a man's car. So he feels like he wants to tell the authorities. So he talks to his friends. They kind of figure out a way to let the authorities know. So he's trying to help solve this murder, and he can't speak, and he can barely move. He's in an automated wheelchair. It takes place in Athens, Georgia, and he has a caregiver, and her name starts with an M. I've lost it, but she's Iranian. I think she's Iranian. So she's from Iran, but she loves the Georgia Bulldog football team. And, I'm a big football fan, a college football fan. So that it's just hilarious how much this woman gets into college football. The stories of friendships in this book are just spot on. I loved it. He talks about how lucky he is just for the life he's lived. And I just was captivated by the story. I can't recommend it more highly.
So great. All right. Well, now we really will talk about a paperback. It's a little paperback. If you've been with us before, you're probably tired of us talking about it, but we won't. We won't stop talking about it. This Shiner is now in paperback. This book, the story is, if you haven't heard it, is that this was hidden in Penguin's catalog, and I don't know how I even came across it, whether it was like some random email, but I read the description and was like, that sounds really interesting. The story is told from Wren, who is a girl who lives up in Appalachia with her father, and her mother and her mother's best friend had very strong friendship, and it's almost, when you start reading it, you forget that it's present day, because they live in such poverty, like no car, no phone, and Wren's father is a preacher, and kind of what you might even imagine like Appalachian preacher to be like, just very in the spirit, and snake handling, and miracles are very important. And there is a moment in this book where a miracle happens, and Wren is kind of searching for why this happened, and doesn't understand it, and doesn't know if it's a good thing. And it's just so great. It is just wonderful. We had the author who, Amy Jo Burns, who we got to interview her, and she was, such a delight to talk to. And she grew up in this area, so I feel like she just knew it so well. And we had recently recommended this book to the currently reading crowd, who, and one of them said that, because I've said it feels a lot like Winter's Bone and Where the Crawdads Sing, and she said she thought it was better than Where the Crawdads Sing. So if you haven't read this one, we recommend it. Maybe this will be the last time we actually publicize it, because we've talked about it so much. But
stop it.
If you come to the store and you haven't read it, we will be putting it in your hands, because it's that good.
I think Erin asked, I mentioned earlier what my top 3 favorites of the year. That was the other one. And Anxious People. They all were great. But I've gotten to be good friends with Amy Jo Burns. She's another author who I love to support because she's amazing. And that was the book with the Currently Reading podcast. We sold out of all of our stock the first day. I think they were most excited about that book than any other. And yeah, go read Shiner. We loved it. All right, I'm not going to spend much time talking about this. This is the William Kent Kruger one, that This Tender Land, that comes out in paperback. It's already out in paperback. So highly recommend. Kind of talks about the Native American children who were put in schools to kind of Americanize them, and it's an adventure story. It's really good. So William Kent Kruger for the win. And I don't have a copy of the other one that we're going to talk about, which is Ghosts of Harvard. This was another one of my favorite books last year. I talked about this last year. My husband and I never go out of town together by ourselves. We went to Chicago before the pandemic hit, and I spent my entire trip to Chicago in my room reading Ghosts of Harvard, which if I'd only known that 3 weeks later the world would shut down, I would have had a little more fun in Chicago. But anyway, but Cadence, whose name is Katie, has an older brother who attended Harvard. And while he was there, he developed schizophrenia and killed himself. So at that point, Katie was a senior in high school. She decides she wants to go to Harvard and redeem the family. And as soon as she gets there, she starts hearing voices. So she thinks that she might have the same issue as her brother. And it's a little bit of a ghost story, a little bit of historical fiction, great campus novel. It sort of has that Dead Poet Society feel. I loved that book.
Brenda mentioned that she likes the hardcover better. I agree. I don't like this one. I don't know why they did it purple.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah. I always do the publisher's feedback on their covers, which they probably don't care, but I mean, it matters. It does. It matters to sell. Okay.
We judge the book by its cover.
Right. And we know our customers do. But this is a pretty cover. We don't have a romance section at Fabled, but we have romance books. This is our contemporary romance pick for summer, which is called 7 Days in June. And this is a story about Eva, who is a best-selling author of erotica. And she meets Shane, who's another author, at a literary event. And what you come to find out is that they know each other, and they go back 15 years before. So they kind of thrust back in each other's lives. And for 7 days, they kind of hash things out. And what is really cool to me is that you learn that their stories that they're writing to each other. So they've been reading each other's books all these years and picking up things in their books that have to do with their relationship and them. It is spicy. So if you want to stay away from spice or you want to embrace spice, just, heads up about that. But it is a really good one.
Yeah, I am famously a very prudish reader. I don't like to read too much of that stuff, but it's very easy to skip through. And one of the things I would say R-rated. I would not say X-rated. I would not be recommending this book if it was X-rated. It's R-ish. But one of the things we try to do at Fabled is there's sort of an outcry in the African American community where they're wanting books that are about Black joy and not just about Black trauma, about racism. And this is just a really great story. Eva is a single mom. She is raising her daughter. It's hilarious, the interactions between her and her daughter. She struggles with migraines. And so I loved how she describes that it's really what they call an invisible disability. And I really appreciated how the author handled that. But she's also in the publishing world, and that's unique too. So I love this book. I was again surprised that Reese picked it. She keeps picking on my favorite books, so maybe Reese and I are kind of like this these days.
That's right. All right, our next and last category that we're going to talk about is sci-fi fantasy. This one is called For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. Now, there is another book that's coming out called The Wolf and the Woodsman. It's interesting that there are these themes of wolves, which I love, but it's kind of funny. So as you would imagine from the cover, this is a retelling, a very unique retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. And I often think that if we're going to do fairy tale retellings, what I usually notice is there's a lot of Beauty and the Beast retellings, like the beauty and then the monster. There is a monster in this book. The story is that every firstborn daughter is for the crown, and the secondborn daughter is for the wolf, and is used as a sacrifice. And so I'm not going to say her name right, but it's like Redarius, but also known as Red, is the second-born daughter, and she knows what her life means, and she knows she has to be sacrificed to the wolf. But there's part of this intrigue, like, who is the wolf? Is he actually a wolf too? So this is very, I mean, I love a good fairy tale so much. And so I think this is a really unique twist on the story. So if you like that, if you like retellings, I'd almost feel like say this has a little bit of a YA feel too, but more like Sarah J. Maas feel, not super light, if that makes sense. And Samantha said this is her favorite book this year. Samantha's one of our beloved booksellers. So she gives her a great recommendation.
Samantha's my go-to for good fantasy or YA. All right, now you're going to hear words that you rarely hear from me. My favorite book this year, set in outer space, is Project Hail Mary. This one has been, it's getting more and more and snowballing where people are absolutely loving it. It's very shiny. He wrote The Martian, which I also loved. Which again, I love his characters. They're very quirky. They're funny. But in this story, the main character is Ryland Grace. Ryland is sort of a disgraced scientist who now works as a middle school teacher in science. But so he had written a paper years ago about the fact that he felt like you can't have life on other planets if there's no water. So anyway, there's a very terrible thing that's happening where there's a fungus that is taking the energy from the sun, and they realize that if there's sort of this ark named after a Russian scientist, and if they don't act quickly and figure out why this fungus is happening, the earth will die. So Rylan is tasked with finding, there's I guess one sun 30 light years away that is not being affected by this fungus. So he decides that he is going to take on the mission of going 30 light years away, and he knows he'll never come home. But he's got to send back information to the earth, and there's a possibility that if he gets this done, that earth will survive. And I don't want to give too much away if you haven't read it yet, but there is a character that he meets along the way named Rocky, which is one of my favorite characters I've ever read. Sort of reminds me of maybe an R2-D2 kind of character. Anyway, this one, I know currently reading podcasts, this is all people talk about is this book. I loved it. It gets very, very technical with science. So I kind of want to skip a few when it gets a little too technical, but the story is beautiful and I loved it. So this is Project Hail Mary. I envision this being a movie. We've talked about this before. Who is John Krasinski?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think I can picture him being Ryland Grace. Aren't you proud of me?
I'm proud of you. I love if you've been part of our book clubs, we love to cast, and we have a big budget when we cast. So we cast all the big people.
Yeah.
Jenny asked if it's appropriate for a 12 and 17-year-old.
It's completely, wait, for what? For Project Hail Mary?
Yes.
Oh, totally. There is nothing that would I would definitely do that especially if they're sciencey.
I love it. And then Chris, one of our booksellers, he says Hail Mary is Weir's most approachable novel without losing the sci-fi charm. And Maddie said that she bought this for her dad, but I read it first. I have done the same thing. Like I've bought stuff for my parents and read it first and tried not to crack that spine too much, so they would still think nobody read it.
You gotta bet it. Make sure that you're giving them a good product.
Right. Okay, so that's it. I can't believe it. How many books did we do?
34, 35.
That's amazing. So hopefully your to be read pile is now teeming with all of our recommendations. Sonia says not enough, keep going. Well, I'll tell you, Sonia, I read all the bad books and that's why they're not on here. I wasted a lot of time reading terrible books. But
and I don't want to give too much away, but I will say that the fall books this year are going to be amazing.
Yes.
And we're going to do, I think we're going to probably do an in-person event and a Zoom event because we still have all of our friends from all over the world who join us for these Zoom events. But I'm already starting to read fall books and I can't wait to talk to y'all about them.
The fun thing about our in-person events is that we give away ARCs too. So we'll talk about the book and give away the ARC. So if you are in town and you're like, oh, I kind of like being on Zoom, just know that you could get a free book if you come to Fabled. Okay. All right, I'm going to post one more time the documents, the list, and then the document that we went through today. And then I'm going to post the code that will give you 20% off your purchase. And our booksellers are standing by to receive your orders. I also want to mention that we will have a display at Fabled on June 21st that will have all of these books. So if this is something you just don't get to, or you come in the store, we will have all the books together and you can just get a basket and.
What are y'all most excited to read? What sounded really good to you guys?
Yes, I want to hear. Mm-hmm. Everyone's probably typing furiously. Nice.
Oh yeah.
Shiner. Oh, good.
Yeah. I'm like, yes, for sure. Yeah, these are all of our favorites. So, yeah. You're not too late to the party with Ghost of Harvard. It's so good.
I haven't read the Ghost of Harvard. I've been wanting to. The hard part too is Elizabeth and I have to share the load. So sometimes she'll read a book and I'm like, well, she's read it, so I should probably read this other one. So, but she also can sell a book. Ghost of Harvard and Haven Point. Oh yes, and I want to also remember to mention, and it's on our website for Haven Point. Actually, it's not on our website, but next month we'll be interviewing Paula McLean, who wrote When the Stars Go Dark. So if you've read that one already, or you need another recommendation, Elizabeth is very, very excited. I am too, to meet her and talk with her. I haven't started the book yet, but
that's a 5, maybe 6-star read for me. I read it in a day. It's tied for my favorite book of the year. Her story is unbelievable. She actually grew up in the foster program. I've heard her speak. She's amazing. So I would definitely tune in July the 13th to hear that. And buy the book, read it. You'll love it.
And I'll post Sonia mentioned I wanted to know the date of the Paula McLean Book Club, and I just posted the link to the event. It'll be on Zoom.
Yeah, When the Stars Go Dark, Renee.
Yes. So you can sign up to be part of it's just like this, like a webinar. So it's just us talking. You can, don't have to be seen on the screen, but just listen in if you want and ask questions on the chat. Yeah, so I am all out of words. And I'm left with only the cherry of my island drink.
I did a little second pour. I needed it. I'm just trying to help remember all the names of the characters. I can remember plots and years. I can't remember characters' names. So
I feel like half of these I'd be like, it's a girl and a boy and then this. But that can be a celebratory pour too.
Remember that book I read 50 books ago? That was really good. I'm trying to So right. We're so thankful that y'all joined us. This is like one of the best parts of the job. I will say, if you ever want to come to Fabled, I do book buying appointments, and I actually did one over FaceTime last week with someone from Chicago. So if you want to even do a FaceTime appointment, it's one of my favorite parts of the job. So just direct message me or find me on Fabled website.
That Alison said that was
Allison, we got to be good buddies over FaceTime.
I love it. Oh, you spell your name like mine, which is one L. It's the right way.
No, I thought that too when she reached out.
That's awesome. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. And we're happy to help if you need anything. So
Yes.
thanks so much.
Happy summer, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Good night.